Hey guys, welcome back to Predictapalooza. This time around it's going to be something a little bit different. A member of the Facebook Predicta group posted a few months back that he'd picked up a lovely pedestal model that looked great cosmetically, picture tube, looks to be in good shape, has the speaker, but no chassis, no controls. And he was wondering, what should he do with it? Could somebody help him out? Should he just convert it to a flat screen? Which I don't think ever looks right or works right. So I said, hey, let me dig through what I have and see if I can help you out. So I did. And it took me a while to find all the bits and pieces, but in the end I did. And I was able to put together this chassis that he should be able to pop into his cabinet, hook up to his existing CRT and speaker, and it will work fine. So if you want to know what I did and how I did it, stay tuned. I posted about this a few weeks ago. What kills me is, 3-4 years ago, somebody local to me parted out in a similar fashion a pedestal to repurpose it for something, I forget what, and listed the chassis and controls, exactly what this guy needs, on Craigslist, and I bought it, along with a picture tube, and I played around with it while I was restoring a chassis, a Holiday model. Picture tube turned out to be shot, and the chassis I just put on a shelf, and it sat there for years. I don't seem to have it anymore. I certainly wouldn't have thrown it away, but I found some bits and pieces from it. This is from it. This is from it. But I have photos of it. I have video from when I first got it, and I talked to you guys about it. I can't find the board from it. I can't find the main chassis body from it. I'm tired of looking for them. I've been looking for weeks, months. But it's very, very similar to this. So this is from Holiday. I have several spare Holiday chassis. Electrically, they're identical. It's just they have some slightly different mounting hardware and slightly different configuration. So I have basically everything I need except for maybe 2 bits, one metal support bracket, and it uses a different antenna terminal thingy. I'm pretty sure I can rig something up for that. So he shipped me his tuner, which is this, which is still there. It's damaged. Fine tuning is broken off, but I should be able to fix that. And all these various bits and pieces. I have a couple Holiday boards to choose from, so that's the plan. At least I have a reference, 100% complete working pedestal model to use as a template for converting this. So I'm going to get started by stripping everything I don't need off of this. Like, I already took the tuner off, because it gets mounted separately to the cabinet, and I already had taken the board off a while ago. So I'll pick the nicer of the 2 boards, restuff it, and rejigger the rest of it, and I can test it with my test harness, picture tube, and rig up a speaker, etc. Should be an interesting project. Time for a progress update. First, I had my choice of 2 boards to rebuild. Both identical, or so I thought, because they both have the yellow stripe, meaning they're the same run number. But there are some subtle differences. The 4.5 megahertz coil, same part number, but the shield looks different. The buzz control looks slightly different. The sockets. Now, these are new ones I put in, but the phenolic ones, are the ones that were here before, were phenolic and look identical to this. Whereas this one, they're all plastic. Either way, phenolic or plastic, the sockets they used then were not the greatest, so I generally replace them all. The 9 pins are the especially bad ones, and the great news about that is Surplus Sales of Nebraska has upwards of 30,000 of these in stock. They are exact drop-in replacements, except they use heavier gauge metal, which Philco did switch to towards the end of the production run. So I would suggest you examine your sockets before you just go ahead and destroy them. So that's the easiest way to get them out, is to take a beat-up pair of nippers and just bust it apart. Get them down in there in between every socket and crunch them, and then heat them up on the backside one by one and knock them out. You should be able to avoid damaging or lifting any traces if you do that, and then these just drop right in. Now, I thought this board was in better condition. That's why I was going to use it, because this one had a damaged corner on it. But then I flipped it over and saw that some goo had gotten onto this and corroded the traces. So I decided to go with this board. Luckily, phenolic and super glue work really well together, so I glued up that corner. It's rock solid. Now, this board was also really gooey and sticky. It seemed like wax, like maybe somebody put a candle on the set and it dripped inside and flowed all over the board. But some brake cleaner and simple green took care of that. It's all squeaky clean. I then examined the board and saw that every component value was identical, all the resistor values, cap values. So I just snipped everything out and removed all the stubs of the leads, so it's all nice and smooth, which also made it a lot easier to clean. So that's ready to just go and be repopulated now. As far as the chassis goes, I will give Philco credit with being creative in making this chassis reconfigurable. So this chassis is a 9L37. They used it in both the pedestal or barber pole and the Holiday models. Holiday's a desktop. The pedestal its chassis is vertically mounted. You just can undo this stuff and reconfigure it, but you do need a few key pieces. So normally when this is in the Holiday, it has these legs that attach on either side, and it kind of sits on these. Well, you just remove those to make it into the pedestal version, in which it sits like this. It gets mounted in this orientation. And instead of having those legs, there's a bracket on either side to get bolted to the cabinet. I have one of them that I salvaged out of a pedestal chassis. I don't have the other one. There should be a similar one on this side. If it doesn't turn up and nobody has one, which is a stretch, I'll try to fabricate one. Luckily, I do have this. So again, normally with the Holiday, let's see, there would be stuff over here. The tuner and the controls would be mounted, well, like this. But in the pedestal, you detach all that stuff and you flip this around, and this gets mounted kind of like this on the front of the cabinet. And that's where you get the classic power knob and then the 3 controls up front. So luckily I had this piece of metal. Otherwise these phenolic supports are identical in both models. Which leads to the final thing, which I also thought was different between the two, but luckily it is not, which is the little antenna lug and local distance switch, which normally in the Holiday is mounted on the back. I didn't realize that it comes off and it's mounted on the pedestal like this on the back of the cabinet. Exactly the same part, same mounting bracket, everything. There is one other minor thing I'm missing, is the AC interlock, but I'm just going to run a power cord directly to the chassis. So yeah, aside from that one little bit of bent metal, I think we're good to go. But there are times I wish I had a brake meaning a device to bend sheet metal, but I can use a vise and a hammer, and I can cobble. It's just a little piece of metal like that has a crease in it at like 45 degrees or something. Not a big deal. I also had my choice of two 9L37 chassis. This one had less corrosion on it, so that was a no-brainer. Although this high voltage box has seen better days, so I may replace this outer box or at least remove the corrosion. Otherwise, it's really clean. No corrosion. Looks like all the original parts are there, so that should be a breeze to go through. But for now, I'm going to focus on this guy and rebuild his board, and then work on installing it and wiring up all the stuff on here. Made some good progress last night. Completely completed the main board, including all the reproduction couplets, new sockets, new just about everything except the coils, and ceramic and mica caps. So that should be good to go. Put my reference board away and move on to the main chassis. I need to compare this to a proper pedestal chassis to see if these control leads are long enough. If they are, that'll save me a little bit of time. Otherwise, I'll have to run new wires. Let's see, when it's in the cabinet, I believe it sits like so, and these actually goes around this way, so they might be long enough. I kind of have to, oh, actually go around this way. Now I'm thinking, maybe not. Man, I'd have to run. Hate to have to run new wires. Well, if I do. It's a little annoying that I just put one of these together before I started on this. So I don't have it next to me. I could do a crude measurement to see how long the wires are. Otherwise, I do have one other actual pedestal left to restore, which I have yet to take to do anything with whatsoever. I could pop that one open and pull the chassis out, but I just have so many odds and ends lying around right now. I don't want to do that quite yet. We can get this completely working with that wired as is. So moving on to the main chassis. I'll leave off reinstalling the board for now and focus on a couple things. One, I want to look inside this box, see what's going on. I'll take a peek right now. This just pressure fits in, and it's held on by this little, well, normally it's held on by this little bit of metal that gets spot welded, tack welded to either box, but I tend to break off after this is opened a few times. Oh. That is actually in really good shape. Some minor cracking on the wax. I will simply take some Corona dope, which is a special type of lacquer that has really great high voltage insulating properties, high dielectric strength, and just brush a little bit on. It'll actually start to melt the wax too, so reflows the wax, seals the whole thing. Works great. Never had an issue with it. Done it many times. And under here is this. And this is in really good shape. It even has the original thermistor. I'll be replacing it. Filament dropper's gone. I may have clipped that out at some point. I'm not sure why I would have, but either I did or somebody did. But everything else appears... almost everything. Actually... See, I can't remember exactly where this came from, but it kind of looks like I might have started working on it. There's the other, the cap that goes across the AC line is also missing. A couple parts are clipped. I think, so if you go back 3.5 years, start of the pandemic, I started working on a moldy holiday. Came out of the basement of the Museum of Broadcast Engineering in Chicago. It had been stored in a horribly damp environment, and bit by bit, as I found better parts, I've been replacing it, so I think maybe nothing is actually left of the original set at this point, including the chassis, because I got a nicer one. This may have been the chassis out of that environment. I have to go back and look at some reference photos. The filter, main filter electrolytic, has also been removed. Anyways, well, that's irrelevant because we're going to be recapping this anyways. This goo down here is simply a little bit of the wax that came off the flyback, which is directly above it. Vertical output transformer, filter choke, audio output transformer. This is the main reason I dislike working on these sets, is if you go through all the trouble taking the board out and repopulating and everything, and you think, hey, the tough part's done, and you still have to deal with all this. At least on the 17-inch sets, once you do the main board, you're almost done. We still have a whole lot of work to do. Now, it is conventional, just point-to-point terminal strips, no big deal. Except for the filament dropper, 3 big power resistors go in here. I'll need to replace that with 3 discrete resistors, replace this thermistor, and deal with the power switch. So I did dig one up. This is what the power switch volume contrast looks like. I do not know if this switch is any good. They tend to go bad, but often you can carefully pry up these 3 tabs, flush out the goo, bend some little brass. So there's a little brass cross piece in there with like nubs on each of the ends of the cross points. Those wear down. If you clean off the gunk, bend those a little bit, you can generally restore functionality. For how long rather, hard to say. Because those points, by the time they're not working anymore, they're already pretty worn down. But if you don't use the set a whole lot, or I would suggest leave it turned on and use an external switch if you can once you get the switch working again. Worst case scenario, you just short this out and use an external power strip or something to power it. This cap is also gone. Then there's the tuner, which on this set gets mounted externally. So this is the type of tuner this is the tuner that was in here. The owner sent me this tuner, which I think is the same. Yeah, part number looks to be the same. But his is missing this bit. So this cracked off and then the whole fine-tuning assembly is gone. I don't know if the length of that is... Well, yeah, okay, the innards of this may be identical, maybe the same part number, but the shaft definitely is not. Obviously, this is a lot shorter. That might be a problem in terms of me replacing the fine-tuning shaft because, well, the replacement or the spare one I have is obviously much, much longer. I'll have to find that bit that just fell off and see what I can do. At least otherwise, it looks to be in good shape. I was hoping I could just swap this onto this, but, well, you know, maybe I'm wrong about that. It's been a while since I looked this closely at one of these. I didn't realize the shaft is that short, and they use a plastic coupling to this part. I'm sure they had their sound engineering reasons for doing this, but it's definitely more complicated than earlier sets where this would just simply be a metal shaft with an outer metal shaft. Whereas in this, they went to great lengths. Oh, I know why. Duh. Hot chassis. This is a hot chassis set. Not floating. This is a real deal. This is going to one side of the AC line. That's why they had to electrically isolate, fine tuning. So all this metal is electrically isolated via these plastic pieces from this. That's why they did that. Alright. So maybe I can just completely swap out the tuners. Well, when we're at that stage where we're worried about tuners to use, we're in good shape. Let's get this thing working first. So I'll get to recapping this guy. Alright, what's left? I have the main board remounted. I need to hook up all the wires. I've referenced chassis, which will make that a little bit easier. The controls. I did remount the power, volume, contrast. I've wired in the contrast, still have to wire up the volume. The power switch is still good, but I don't have the AC interlock on this, so I'm going to bypass that for now and just tack an AC line directly into the set, and I'll control it with a switch on my Variac. I'll need to rig up a tuner, and that plate that had been here, the antenna terminal thingy that I removed, which is going to get mounted to the cabinet, this guy, that has a range switch. I clipped the leads on that. I think I'll just short them together so that it's always in distance mode, meaning it's boosting the gain to the maximum. I'll have to populate it with tubes. I have a bunch set aside for working on these sets, so that's not a problem. Otherwise, I think we're in good shape. I'll try using the tuner that the owner shipped to me, even though the shaft is damaged. I'll still be able to work with it as is. So I'm going to get to it and finish wiring this stuff up. Okay, I finished installing the main board, populated it with tubes, rigged up the tuner that the owner had sent me, finished wiring in the volume control. I hardwired in a power cord. I'll use my PR57 for the power switch, and I have it plugged into my test jig. Now for the first power up, I have no fusible resistor installed, so there will be no power going to the B+ circuit, as my usual technique when I power these up. So this is not here. So without that, there's no positive voltage going into the plates of any of the tubes. The only thing that should happen is the filament should glow. Just checking for continuity through this whole crazy contraption here. Alright, let's get to it. I will be fairly amazed if this works without some issues. Many of these that I worked on, I'm always forgetting something. Okay, well, we have zero current draw, so I forgot something. I screwed something up. It's a drag with series trunks. That's when filament doesn't light up. It could be anywhere along in this path. But it could be one simple thing. The two tuner tubes have to complete the circuit. And normally this would be bolted to this, but I'd have it detached. Perhaps through these wires, and with this grounding, those two are not actually connected. When it's in the cabinet, and the pedestal is a metal strap that goes between the two. So let me just throw an alligator clip between them. That's all I need to do to complete the circuits. Nope. Oh well, it's a nice thought. So now we start wiggling, and if it's not just a tube that's not seated right, I'm going to have to get out my ohm meter and start tracking it down. Alright, so could be a wiring mistake, could be any one of these tubes in here with an open filament. Generally I put in some new old stock tubes in. But there are a few used, like I kept the tubes that came with the tuner installed. So, easiest thing to do, at least on this chassis I found, is flip it on its side. We have access to everything. And get some good lighting going. And we're going to trace things out. So here's where the power cord comes in. Right here, so one of these lugs is going right to the chassis, and the other is going through the filament circuit. So right off the power, we go through our thermistor, we go through our filament droppers, and then I think the first tube is actually the horizontal output tube, and then it winds its way through all around. So I'm going to take my ohm meter and clip one end of it to this point and just start going through. And the resistance, I should have continuity, and the resistance should increase as I go down through the chain. And when I find out it's infinite, that's what the problem will be. They do give you a little bit of an aid on the schematic. They break out the filament circuitry separately. So I'm talking about this. So one side of the AC line, going through these resistors, down. There's that horizontal output tube, then the damper tube. Then we go through the NVIDIA LIF board, the 5 AM8, the 3 BZ6s on the IF board, and then we jump to the main circuit board, audio output, and so on, until we come around and the CRT finally completes the circuit. Or no, sorry, goes to the tuner, and the tuner finally completes the circuit. I think I found the problem. 3AU6 with an open filament. It's been replaced. I checked for continuity. We've got a few hundred ohms. So, let's go. Yes, we have current draw. Peaked at about 0.8 amps. It's settling down to 0.6, which is exactly where it should be. Yes, we have happy tubes glowing. Alrighty, next up, put in the fuse, try full power up. Okay, here we go. I'm going to monitor the main supply voltage on the set. Okay. Drawing. Actually, the same current this time. I noticed that the fusible resistor contacts were kind of grungy. Okay, no, the tubes are warming up. It's drawing more current now. That's good. Oh, an RB plus, 225. I think it's a little low. Let me check how much voltage I'm feeding in. Oh, I'm way low. Get that sucker up to 117. Right now we're at about 250 volts. That seems reasonable. Crackle out of the speaker. Response to the volume control. And nothing on the CRT. Ooh, that control is very crusty. The control is completely frozen. I think we might be dealing with some bad controls here. Okay, so let me deal with that. I managed to free up all the controls and clean them, and they seem to have continuity. Fired the set back up, and we seem to have no high voltage. I've tried swapping out the horizontal output tube and the damper tube and horizontal oscillator tube, made no difference. Just a quick check here with a fluorescent bulb. Nothing. So, I gotta check all the stuff in the horizontal circuitry, including I'll do a continuity test on the various windings on the flyback. Something I haven't been doing because I've had pretty good luck with, well, not pretty good luck. The flyback has been good in every predictor that I've restored so far, but there's always a first. Let's hope it's something simple. Oh, and I did swap out the high voltage tube as well, so I did all the easy stuff. Now it's time to actually get out some test equipment and start probing around. Well, first I checked the flyback resistances, and they all look to be close enough to the schematic that I certainly didn't have any open windings. I then pulled out the damper tube, horizontal output tube, and horizontal oscillator tube, and got out my resistance chart. I'm always telling you guys, when you have trouble where some part of the circuit's just not working, it's not doing what it's supposed to do, check the resistance. It's the easiest thing to do that checks on a lot of stuff. Damper tube checked out okay. Horizontal output tube checked out okay. Got to the horizontal oscillator. V10, 6CG7, so it's supposed to be 16K. between pin 1 and, if we look at that symbol, 280 volt source, which is the main supply for the TV. Okay, I have infinity. Well, what does pin 1 go to? Pin 1's a plate, so you definitely want to have positive voltage there. Goes to a 15K resistor, horizontal ringing coil, and then down to power supply. Ringing coil. So, if any of you guys were sharp eyes and observant when I was deciding on which board to choose from, there were a couple things missing off this board. I believe this coil here and the horizontal ringing coil. Why? Because I'd scavenged them for other projects. Well, I chose to use this board, and I plucked those two coils out of yet another board. I didn't check them before I installed them. That was stupid. So it looks like this is open. I went digging through my junk box for spares and found one, and it's open too. Even if I find a good one, it's going to be a little tricky to install it without pulling the board out. However, it is not necessary for the operation of the TV, so I have jumpered it out. In fact, part of the detailed service setup instructions, one of the steps involves shorting that coil out. It's a ringing coil. It works just like a tuning fork. It helps keep the circuit on frequency, but the real frequency is determined by some RC time constant. So you can short that out, and the set will run. So here we go. Comes the sound. Still not really sensing any high voltage. Oh, but again, it's working so well I can't even detect it. So there we go. Sometimes once the high voltage kicks in, you can kind of like stare as the static or feel the static electricity in the air. But hey, awesome. Now with that ringing coil shorted out, it's entirely possible I won't be able to get a lock when I feed a video signal in. But if that's the only issue we have with this set, I will be ecstatic. So that's the next step now, is let's see if this tuner actually works. Okay, I have signal hooked up. Oh, it is doing something. I changed channels. Cool. Now one simple thing I can do is try a different tuner. Oh, whoa. Almost gave up too soon. Alright, select sound. May need a sound alignment. Might just be off that bad. But Picture's not too bad. With the help of a signal generator putting out a 4.5 megahertz FM modulated sound fed right into the beginning of the audio circuit, I was able to peak up the coils and get some sound. But it's not great. I have the volume up all the way now. But at least it's something. So sound is getting through. I also tweak these cores just a little bit back and forth. This is the video and sound IF going through here, and I could improve it, but at times the picture quality got washed out. You really can't do this without proper test equipment. Now this stuff, the service info actually says to do by ear, to just tune into a TV station and peak these coils till it sounds best. I've done that, but the fact that these cores alters the sound so much has me concerned that something's up with this. Now, I have not taken this board out or reworked it yet. So it sounds a lot better now, but now the picture's really going. And the signal to noise ratio is just terrible. So, two things. One, I'm going to pop this out and go through this board. Now, there are no paper caps in here. So I found that reworking this board doesn't really gain you anything. But it's the one thing I haven't done anything with yet. So, and also, you never know if somebody's monkeyed with this stuff. So up front here we have trimmer caps, and then we have 3 cores. These I've found generally don't do a whole lot. But these are having more of an effect than I would expect. So somebody may have tinkered with this, who knows. So I'm going to take this out, I'm going to rework this board, reinstall it, see what the performance is like, and then I am going to have to go through and do an alignment. So that'll be an interesting process to go through. I went ahead and removed the IF board. As you can see, there's not much to it. There are some coils, some ceramic caps, and carbon comp resistors. And really the only thing that can go bad are the carbon comps. I'm not saying it's impossible to have an open coil or a ceramic cap go bad, but I've never seen it. I checked all these resistors. The only one that's really off is the 47 ohm. It's measuring 60 something. The rest are within 20%, but they should be within 10% for the most part, so I'm going to go ahead and replace them since I have this out, but I don't expect that to solve any of my issues. I expect I need to do an alignment, so after I'm done with that and reinstall it, I'm going to give this guy a try. I've got it essentially new in box off of eBay. I've never tried using it. This seems like a good time. Fingers crossed it works, because if it does, it should be a really good addition to the workbench, because it can handle a variety of alignment, from FM radio to early TVIFs to later TVIFs, built-in markers. Really nice device. I believe it's solid state. Uses some oddball connectors, no BNCs in sight. That's the one annoying thing, but I did get the cables with it. Hopefully I can hook this up to my other equipment without too much of a headache, in particular my scope, which is all on BNC. I might have some RCA to BNC adapters lying around. One way or another, I'll get something set up. Well, doing that alignment was a fun exercise. I got to play around with some test equipment, but the sound is just not what it should be. And I do have the ringing coil to deal with. So, much as I don't want to, I'm going to pull the board again. And I pulled out my last spare parts chassis, which is basically all original. A few caps are replaced ages ago, but hopefully this ringing coil is good. And what I'm going to do is transfer over the sound coils from this. This is a sound pickoff. The IF transformer and the gated beam detector coil, and that is the buzz trimmer, which seems really noisy and flaky on this one. So basically I want to transfer everything from this board to that board. But in order to do it, I need to take both boards off the chassis. It was a little painful to do, but I didn't see any alternative other than to pull the board again and replace some things. So I pulled out my last remaining parts board and plucked a few things out. In particular, ringing coil. I checked it for continuity this time. It appears to be good. And I swapped out the IF transformer. And I bet some of you were thinking right away when I had sound troubles, server mica disease. Yeah, the sound IF transformer is the type where there are exposed mica wafer type capacitors underneath that snap rivet there in the base. Rather than trying to repair this guy, I just swapped it out. Why? Because I've never encountered this problem before. I've restored a few dozen Predictas and I've yet to have a problem with the sound coils. Now, I did get a comment from another restorer online who has had trouble with them. So there is a chance. But here's the other thing. I don't know what value caps those are supposed to be. And given that you cannot access this board from the bottom when it's installed, it'd be a little tough to use trimmer caps or experiment with different values to get it working. The only thing I could think of is maybe with a sleep generator or RF generator. I know it's supposed to be centered on 4.5 megahertz. Maybe I could have peaked it out of circuit, but I'm fairly confident this will work. I also went ahead and replaced the ceramic caps. They virtually never go bad, but I have a bunch on hand, and I figured, well, I've got the thing out and I'm reworking that area, I might as well replace all those as well. So you see we've got new ceramic caps down in there. Alright, so all that's left is to rewire everything and then cross our fingers and hope that solves the problem. The board has been reinstalled and the set is powered up. I'm not surprised the horizontal hold is off because, of course, I replaced that ringing coil. But with an adjustment of the horizontal hold control, yes, we can get lock. Now what about sound? We have sound. It's not perfect though. We'll do a few things. One, get to something that's not modern programming. All that harsh text tends to add a buzz. So let's see. And something else I discovered while working on this is that the RCA connector to the tuner is flaky. It's this guy right up here. So sometimes you get a signal like this. If I manipulate it a bit, sounds a lot better. Picture's not so great though. So I need to clean that, tweak that, replace that, do something to get it better. Now another issue I've mentioned a few times, is something I really need to stop doing ASAP, is my signal source. Coming out of a converter box going through a splitter, there's a 3 dB loss out of the two ends. That's half the signal strength. Now, when you receive a signal over the air, that can be pretty weak too, so I didn't think it'd be that big of a deal that the AGC and whatnot would it'd be just fine, because it's still a pretty strong, clean signal, but it does make a difference. I'll hook up the converter box directly to this and show you what I mean in a moment. But even so, it's a lot better. So here's max volume now. Let's try adjusting some of this stuff. So there's a buzz control on this. Oh, by the way, the alignment instructions for this are actually just tune into a station and tweak it by ear. They do not tell you to use a sleep generator or RF generator or anything like that. And one of the controls is a buzz control, which is works in conjunction with this rather odd tube to 3BN6. So this doesn't use a ratio detector like a lot of sets did. They tried to simplify things with the invention of this tube, which Zenith came up with and used it in their portholes and other sets extensively. That's why there's only one IF transformer. With this variable resistor and this coil, that's all you need for FM sound detection. And just one tube. So you're supposed to adjust this so it sounds best. It's just as simple as that. So if you go off to the side, you start hearing static. And to the other side. Now with the old, before I reworked this board, there was just one really tiny sweet spot where I could hear sound at all. I seem to have a lot more control now. That's a good thing.
Weekdays and weeknights on Me TV. Is your closet cramped and cluttered? Is it impossible to find that shirt to wear and then even
still a tiny bit of hiss, but it's pretty good. Now, see that buzz? That is the effect of modern programming where there's really high or really bright whites and really black blacks. Harsher content, more extreme content than they would have had back when the set was designed. They didn't have text on screen back then. With adjusting the buzz control and the fine-tuning, you can minimize it. It's really hard to completely eliminate it, or maybe impossible. Alright, so that sounds pretty good. I don't know about these other coils. So the one next to this tube, there's two sweet spots. They say to use the one that's closer to the bottom of the coil. And this is the quadrature detection kind of coil. So this takes place of the ratio detector coil. It's just a single rather than being a more complex setup. Just a single and variable inductor.
Stop searching through clutter for the right outfit. Now you can build an outfit and group it together, so it's easy to find.
Sounds pretty good to me. This, the one on the far left, is the pick-off, and it's resonant with a capacitor on the board, and that is what picks off the 4.5 megahertz from the video signal. Alright, so obviously that's getting worse, so let's go the other way. Seems pretty good. Doesn't really peak like an IF transformer would. Now this is the IF transformer. There's just one stage. This has an upper and a lower slug. Okay, so that's definitely worse. Go the other way.
Car accident? Get JJLegal.com.
It's pretty good about where it was. And you have to get the right kind of tool like this where it has a hexa and then it's just round in the middle. So you got to go past the top core to get to the bottom core. And just kind of get a feel for it. And I'll try to get the hexa. Okay, I'm in the bottom core now. Which doesn't seem to really want to move too well. Nope. Oh, there we go. I wasn't all the way down. There we go. Okay, so that's bad. Now the other transformer, the bottom core, was not acting like this. It was not allowing me to adjust things. It didn't really seem to make any difference where I put it.
In a clinical trial, Keytruda and chemotherapy was proven to help people live longer than chemotherapy alone. Keytruda is used to treat more patients with advanced lung cancer than any other.
That's pretty good right there.
Keytruda may be used with certain chemotherapies as your
The tricky bit is to get it back out.
Non-small cell lung cancer, and you do not have an abnormal EGFR or ALK gene. Keytruda can cause your immune system to attack healthy parts of your body during or after.
I turn the volume up all the way. It's good. It's not spectacular. So I want to do two things. One, I want to go back and do the alignment on this. And two, I want to try this with a different tuner. And three, try directly connecting a converter box. So do that first and not touch anything else. I have a second one. I'm just going to get that out and hook it up. I have these quick disconnect F connectors. Instead of being threaded, they just push on. Makes this a little bit easier. So I just have to plug this guy in. Same type of converter box. I bought two of them back when the government coupons were happening years ago. It's one of the better ones. I don't know if it's available anymore. Access HD. fact, I don't know if any of these are made anymore, really. Alright, so we get that plugged in. Looks a lot better. No statics, a stronger, cleaner signal coming through, so they're not going through that splitter. Put the same station on. There we go. No sound. Make sure they got the sound all the way up. I made this mistake once before. You can adjust the volume on these converter boxes. You got to make sure that's on max before you write off your device is having trouble.
Maybe you could spare us some.
With the leftovers
Much
for the dog.
louder. Much louder.
Here,
What is it?
So, let that be a lesson to you. I see this guys post all the time online with troubles with their image doesn't look good, sound isn't good, or they see lines, distortion. Make sure you have a good signal source. Check it with another TV if you can. Try a different signal source. I also need a better antenna hookup. That's why I keep getting that warning on the screen. So we had a bunch of issues going on here. Bad connection to the tuner. Weak signal source. Very likely silver mica disease, and that or one of the ceramic caps was off.
I won't be teaching the likes of this.
Now we've got volume for days. Nice clear image. I still want to go through the alignment though.
Told me that you were...
But I'll do it in a separate video because I'm going to do it as part of my vintage TV alignment series. But even so, that is a really, really good picture.
You best eat your food, Mr. Boswell, before it gets cold.
Here's a better look at it. That is a really, really good image. Now remember, I don't have the set, so I'm going to have to ship it to the owner, just the chassis, and he'll have to hook it up. So I want to get this working as reliably as I possibly can. So back to that tuner issue, I might just swap this out for a different tuner. This connection, it's too flaky. And that, it's an RCA jack and it's connected directly to the outer shell. It's not something you can easily replace. Just look how flaky this is. I don't want to give it back to somebody like that. Get this all back in the cabinet and then have this connection. I've tried squeezing this and cleaning this up. I think it's the interior part where the signal goes on this pin. It's just not making good contact.
But survival depends on drastic measures.
Set's been playing a few hours without any troubles. So I'm going to wrap this project up. I am going to go with this tuner and let the owner know that it's done. So I hope you enjoyed this roller coaster ride of a project. Had some problems I hadn't encountered before, and as usual, some of the mistakes were self-inflicted. Some of the problems were self-inflicted, like not checking the ringing coil before I installed it. Always measure twice, cut once. And sound. I'm not going to trust these anymore. And I was consulting with a colleague online, and he says somebody he thinks has possibly determined the internal capacitor values. So these can be rebuilt. Maybe we'll be looking at that in the future. But for now, I thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed it.
You've done away with humanity, the striving of man to achieve great